Good afternoon, everyone.
So thank you, welcome, good afternoon. I'm excited about this particular webinar talking about the complexities around feature mapping. It's a little bit more challenging than what you would think about. But I want to cover like tools, resources, strategies for selecting the most appropriate app based upon the desired outcome. And before we start looking at feature mapping or feature matching, we'll talk about mapping and matching and what the difference is in a little bit. But I wanted to start off with these 4 frameworks. These are common frameworks that we often consider when we're selecting technology. These frameworks also apply when we're selecting apps for accommodations for students with disabilities, or apps to increase productivity, apps for whatever the task might be in the school environment, life skills, or transition, or work environments. Many in schools are familiar with the SET framework by Joy Zabala, and looking at the student, what their needs are, what their abilities are, looking at the environment that the technology might be used in, or the task that has to be completed, really understanding the task itself. What are the required abilities to perform that particular task? And the very last thing that you would ever consider would be the assistive technology tool. The MPT framework, Matching Persons with Technology by Marcia Scherer, really looks at the individual's predisposition with the technology as a indicator for successful use of a device or an app. And so those are some of the things we would want to know is, has the person ever used an iPad before? Do they know basic gestures like swiping and tapping and the home button? What is their iPad literacy as it relates to using the iPad before we'd ever even consider using an app? If they've never used an iPad before, we've got to take a step back and get the person up to speed on just basic access and the iPad. The PEO model is something that's used by occupational therapists. This too looks at the person, the environment that the task is being done, and then the occupation or the specific details associated with what needs to be completed, and then selecting the appropriate apps. And then the HAT model is the human, then looking at activity and assistive technology. The concept here that I wanted you to understand is the very last thing we would ever consider is the app itself. We're really looking at what the student or the person's needs are first, and then really analyzing that and analyzing the tasks. And Stephen Covey always talks about begin with the end in mind. Clearly know and understand what are the goals and objectives that we're trying to achieve. If we clearly understand that, then we can begin to look at appropriate apps. So matching the student with the most appropriate, already talked about that, and beginning with the end in mind. So I want you to take a look at the physical, sensory, and cognitive limitations that the person might have, as well as the physical, sensory, cognitive abilities required to use a particular app. The whole thing about the environment and the time and the social demands, people often don't think about the environment on where is this device, where is this app going to be used? Is it going to be used during physical education? Is it going to be used in tech ed or cooking classes? And how will it be interacted? Will the person have peanut butter and jelly on their fingers as they're trying to interact with the app? These are all things that we have to consider. We have to consider time limits and what time of day. How about the apps being used after school or before school? And then what are the social demands? Is it something that is being used for communication? Is it appropriate to have that app in different environments? Is it going to be body worn, like a communication device? Will the person have that on their body at all times to be able to use to communicate? Or is it going to be mounted on a wall for maybe tech ed, and you're swiping through to look at sequencing of tasks that you need to do? Or maybe in a chemistry lab that you have a lab activity and you need to know the sequence of steps that you have to do to complete the lab assignment. Also, like in a car or lying in bed, outside, one of the challenges is with apps, you want the child, the student who's outside on the playground, to be able to communicate like all other students outside. But often the challenge is the glare on the screen of the iPad can be sometimes problematic. All right, the inputs and outputs. This is really important. The inputs is, what does it take to program a particular device? What is, when you're, the other part was, I remember many schools buying all of these iPads and buying all these apps and loading up the iPad with the apps, but nobody knew how to actually integrate that app into a particular learning environment. And when we talk about feature mapping, I'm not looking at apps for reading or writing or apps for math or science. Those are educational technology apps. What we're really looking at is, according to the federal definition on assistive technology, is any device or system that's used to maximize, maintain, or accommodate for physical, sensory, cognitive limitations to maximize abilities in all life functions. So we're really looking at what is the functional limitation that that app is going to be used for to overcome. So many of these apps are really too complex. And when I say too complex, what I mean is that when you program the app for executive function, there might be 10, 15 steps that you have to go through. You have to scroll down for a timer. You have to make all these decisions. You have to figure out, do you want somebody to be reminded with a picture, with a video, with a voice, with music? So there's a lot of decision making. And who's going to do the inputs? Who's going to program this device? Same thing with communication devices. Often we need an additional person there really programming, putting the language, putting information in, setting up the layout on a communication app. So inputs, understanding inputs is really important. Then outputs. Outputs is the other part, and that is how is the information being displayed on the screen? Is it visual? Is it auditory? Is it text? And that's important is if you have somebody with a vision impairment, with a hearing impairment, a learning disability, that where they can't read the textual information that's on the screen. And do you have some customization with outputs? Can you use an app on your iPhone with vibration outputs for somebody who experiences deaf blindness, or even for somebody with a hearing impairment, being able to distinguish different reminders based upon different vibration patterns that come across on the phone? So it's very complex. If an app is too physically, sensory, or cognitively demanding, it's going to get abandoned. And the other thing we do when we're looking at features, we can do time and motion studies. And what I mean by time and motion studies is we look at how long does it take for the person to program the app, and then how long does it take for the person, when they're prompted to do a particular task, from the time that they get the auditory or visual prompt to the time that they actually complete the particular task. How long does that take? If an auditory prompt requires you to open up an iPad, swipe, put a password in, read the information, hit a checkbox that says complete, then put the iPad back down, and then do the task, you lose a lot of time just trying to process the information on the iPad or the information on the app. And then by the time you get to the task, you might have forgot all the things that you had to do. So that becomes really important. And when we look at motion, we look at the motion on, do you have to use your finger to swipe? Do you have to tap? Do you have to hold the iPad in a certain way or position? So all of those are really important when you're thinking about selecting an appropriate app. So what I want you to key in on this slide is efficient. We want to always select the most efficient app to achieve that desired outcome. And when we do time and motion studies, we look at apps that require the least number of steps and least cognitive demands and least physical demands. So performing an app analysis. So I'm going to ask if we can open up that app or if we can put that handout up, because I'm not able to drag it over on the app analysis handout. Anna Marie? There it is. Okay. But somehow, how do we make it full screen? Okay. All right. There we go. That's a little bit better. So what I want to show you here in this particular handout, and you have access to all of these handouts. So when we're doing an app analysis for feature mapping for a particular student, of course we have the name, the age, the date. But when I was saying begin with the end in mind, you need to know what is the task that you want that person to be able to perform that they can't do right now, and that you're hoping if they use an app, it would allow them to do. So clearly know what the goal is, what the outcome is. Then you need to find out, so why can't that person do that activity now or that task? And so you have to clearly define what are the primary limitations that the person has related to that task. Such as, oh, they can't remember to do the task. There seems to be a lot of noise in the background. Not sure where that's coming from, but so it's like so I'm going back to, if the goal is, or the limitation is they can't remember, or they're not able to read the information, or they're not able to write or type, or the seeing or hearing, speaking, organizing, they can't complete the task on time. Is it they don't understand cause and effect, or they have lots of anxiety and they need an app to really help to self-regulate and to calm down, or the person is experiencing difficulty transitioning from one task to another. So apps to help with transitioning. Maybe sending a message to their parents and they can't type up a message, they can't, you can't use any voice recognition app because the speech is not clear. So you're really looking at an app that records a voice file and then transmits the voice file. Then you're going to check off where is it being done, at school, at home, in recreation activities, employment. Then you look at, so what are the recommended apps that you want to really kind of explore? And then on the right-hand side, this is what I call, I do what's called a mismatch analysis. So you see those numbers? So the numbers, the L means that you circle the numbers that the student has limitations in. So maybe they have a limitation in the ability to interpret information. Maybe they have a limitation associated with coordination or stamina, or they can't move their head, or they can't hear. So you just go through and circle what the limitations are. Then the A column, that's for what are the required abilities to use a particular app. Then on that list, anywhere where you have a double hit, like let's say the number 4 is checked and you have to speak into the iPad. So if you have a checkbox plus a circle around the number 4, you're going to highlight that in yellow or something, because that's going to tell you, now that's what you're going to have. That's your mismatch analysis. And then you could look at, well, all right, so maybe this app requires you to speak, but let's dive into that further. So let's say you don't have good speech, but people can recognize maybe 80% of what you say. Well, therefore, we want to record a voice file. We don't want to use an app that does speech to text. Rather, an app that will record and send a particular voice file so that whoever at the other end can listen and hear and perhaps recognize most of what the person is saying. Then we're also looking at the environment that I mentioned. Where is it taking place? What are the social and other abilities? And then the last page is we need to find out, do you have to swipe to find the app? Do you have to touch it? Do you have to scroll down? Do you have to type information? Is it using auditory prompts or vibration prompts or voice for input? What are the outputs? So you're analyzing that app so to understand everything that's required in inputs and outputs. And then if you look at that section, alternative access methods that could be used. So just because an app doesn't look like it's going to be a good match doesn't necessarily mean that you should ignore that app, because you can do some really cool things to adapt the app, to make the app easier to open up, to use some control enhancers with that particular app. So, and switch access. I want to talk about switch access recipes with custom gestures. So for a long time, I really disliked apps that you could use with switches, because people would say, oh, look, that app is switch accessible. Well, the problem with a switch accessible app, when you went into using like scanning, and oh my goodness, the accessibility features, it would drive me crazy, and it was so incredibly labor intensive. So yeah, that app might have been switch accessible, but with switch scanning, it just didn't seem really realistic because of the cognitive and physical demands associated with switch scanning. Well, then when Apple came out with the ability to do switch recipes with custom gestures, using custom gestures became an incredible game changer. What it meant was we could stop doing all that switch scanning stuff, didn't have to do that anymore, because with the custom gestures, we could do something really simple with a couple of different parts on that, like watching YouTube clips. When you bring up YouTube right onto your computer, you will see the play button where you hit play and pause, and then over to the right, you can tap on to watch the next video. Hey, guess what? I can just plug two switches into a switch interface into the iPad, and now I can have a student easily turn a video on, off, and then just go to the next video with the second switch. No more switch scanning is needed. But I don't think people know how to do custom gestures. But if you look at that saying, hey, we can adapt this app very easily with custom gestures and switch access. All right, additional accessories. Like there's new types of styluses out, or let's say the sound is not loud enough and you're trying to use communication. Could you add a sound enhancer that like a backboard to the iPad so that the 4 speakers on the iPad could bounce the sound off of a backboard, and then it increases the volume. Some simple things you can do with that. All right, and then recommendations. So now let's go back to that PowerPoint. Anna Marie. Oh, here we go. All right, so we got the PowerPoint back on. All right, great. So here's an example of, this is called Say and Go app. This requires, it's one of the least amount of effort. There's one other that's even less effort than this one. But so here's how Say and Go works. On the iPad, we will put Say and Go app in the lower right-hand corner in the system tray. And what the person can do is, even with their eyes closed, they can easily tap the Say and Go app and just start talking, because all of these incredible features are pre-programmed into this app. So as you start talking, so it might be, remember to do my history assignment. You do not have to read. You do not have to do any scroll down. You do not have to send an email. What happens is it will time out by itself at 7 seconds. You can make it longer, 15 seconds, whatever you want to set for your standard recording time. And then as soon as it stops, guess what? It automatically emails it to whoever's email you set up. So let's say you want mom and dad to help you remember that you've got your history assignment. Or let's say when you get home at the end of the day, you are going to open up your computer and you're going to see all the homework that you have to remind yourself that you have to do. It's all going to show up right in the emails. And when you click on it, what's going to happen is you're going to hear your voice, or mom and dad's going to hear your voice saying, I got a history assignment I have to do. I got to read chapter 10. And so we encourage the students to use your Say and Go app. What's your homework? What do you got to do for tonight? All right, take responsibility, say it out loud, and then move on to your next homework. So this is really a cool app. I did an app analysis on the Say and Go app, and at one time it eliminated over 50 different tap, swipes, types, decision making because everything is pre-programmed. So you just tap once, start talking, walk away. No reading, no hearing, no writing, no listening. All of that is just being recorded. But you do have to get out some sounds. You do have to make some vocalization. You do have to say something. So you do have to have the ability to make sound. Now, I'm going to go to the next slide because I want to show, I'm going to get my arrow here. All right. So here's my arrow. I'm pointing to the Say and Go app, and I call this my tray at the bottom, and I put this on the right-hand side. If I had a vision impairment, I'd put a little dot right there, so I would know where that Say and Go app is. So that's what I'm talking about, finding apps that are the most efficient to use. Here's another one that's really awesome. This one is a free app. It's called Seeing AI. The minute I tap on this particular app, this comes up and it focuses on the sheet of paper or the object, and it just starts reading the page automatically. Now, no words are being highlighted. You're not getting any text information. This is a good feature if you want to read a menu. You're at a restaurant and you quickly want to read a menu, or maybe you want to read maybe something on a medication list, or maybe you've got a short worksheet that you want it to read out loud. So look at the word here, auto reads and speaks without touching anything. You just aim it at a document, at a poster, at whatever, and it just starts reading. Now there's other features here too that if you did want to spend more time and scroll down, there's one that you aim it at a person or you aim it at a group and it'll tell you, hey, lady, 53 years old, is smiling. And it's like, wow, that is really cool. It also has a feature where it will scan barcodes and will tell you product information. But I like the fact, aim and it automatically speaks. Now, I like this one better. So the Seeing AI app, that's a free one. This one I paid like, I think $99. This is a KNFB reader. This is just a phenomenal app. It's worth every bit of the money I spent on it. I happen to have a learning disability, and I absolutely love it because not only will it scan and automatically read, I don't have to tap anything else. I can change the font size, I can make it larger, it'll highlight the words as it's being read to me out loud. This is a phenomenal app designed for blind, low vision, and dyslexic. Really, really great app. You can also aim it at a PowerPoint. You can do a lot of cool things with it. I love the customization that's also built into it, and it's one of my go-to apps all the time. All right, here's what I like about Voice Dream Writer. So Voice Dream Writer's been out. It's got a lot of great features. It's what I call a robust app, and robust means you've got lots of bells and whistles. You've got lots of customization. And so Voice Dream Reader and Writer is great for individuals, for students with disabilities, but my favorite is the Auto Speak. So Voice Dream Writer, I'm always using my voice and I'm always dictating my reports, but I have to go back and edit it, because what if Siri, or what if the voice recognition types up something that I didn't want it to type up? I didn't say that. It made a mistake. How would I know? So I'd have to go through and I'd have to kind of highlight it and read it. But guess what? With Voice Dream Writer, as soon as I stop dictating, it automatically speaks out loud, which is really cool because I don't even have a choice. It automatically reads back what it just typed. So therefore, I can right then and there know if it's screwed up, if there was an error. So that's really cool. So there's no excuse for not editing your work, because it automatically speaks it right back to you as you typed it, and you can make the editing right there on the fly. So that is a cool feature. All right, so some app features. You've got the app, the features are great, but you need additional support. So let's talk about those additional supports. So here's what I was talking about, a sound enhancer. This is an amplification app, and I want to make it louder for somebody that has a hearing loss, or maybe the students in the back of the classroom, and so the teacher in the front of the classroom can hear. So I just create a little track that the iPad slides in and out of, and you've got this flat board, so the sound bounces off the back of the board and pushes outward and automatically increases the volume without having to plug in an external speaker. Magnification. You know, there's a lot of these magnification apps that are out there, but your hands get tired holding the iPad over the document. So here's a little enhancer where just made out of lock line, an elbow here, and then there's an elbow underneath, and then this is positioned right over the paper, so therefore you don't have to hold the iPad. You can have your pencil underneath. You can follow along on this sheet. And this is also using an app that's called Better Vision. So Better Vision with this enhancement, this holder, hands-free holder for your magnification apps. Here's one is, how do we make accessible flashcards? So we put the math flashcards on the bottom. We always want to be 12 inches away from our cards or our sheet of paper. So here's the iPad. You don't want the iPad to move. You don't want the paper to move. So now we've got both stationary. You just tap on it, take another picture, and then you put all these math flashcards with the answers. You put it all into the photo album app that's built right into the iPad. So that makes it really pretty easy without having to buy an app. All right, now we're so used to buying apps or installing apps, but did you know that some apps are really difficult to make it accessible? And I'm going to give you two examples of YouTube. The YouTube app on an iPad is awful, but if instead of using the YouTube app on the iPad, I go to the YouTube website, if I'm using the YouTube website, I can make that accessible so fast with just 2 switches. If I use the YouTube app, no way. YouTube app is very problematic. Same thing with, did you know pbskids.org? They have got like 200 different games. If I go to the website, I can make those apps so easily switch accessible with custom gestures. But if I use the PBS Kids doing the apps, not so much. It's much more difficult. So think about using websites, because websites you're supposed to do tapping on different things to make it happen, and therefore using custom gestures and switch access recipes built into the iPad is the way to go. All right, so see these two little pieces of tape? This is called Remo 2. It's a double-sided, clear, removable tape. When I'm making switch access recipes, I'll pick a couple of switches and I'll plug it into the hook. And by the way, the hook is working just fine with iOS 10, and it is working just fine with iOS 11. There's really no glitches. It's working just fine. Now, what I do is I take these two pieces of tape and I will mark the glass on the iPad because it leaves no residue behind. So I mark where I want the person, where you would normally touch on the iPad to interact with something. So I mark that. After I mark it with the clear tape, then I go through and I can create my switch access recipe. I know where you're supposed to tap on the screen. And then after I create my switch access recipe, I then will remove these two pieces of removable tape off the glass, off the iPad. All right, so here's an example of all of these fabulous games with pbskids.org. And when you open up these games, you will notice that many of the games, you just tap in the same place over and over. You don't have to tap here, tap here, tap there. So this next slide will give you an example. So I can, with the hook, I can plug in up to 4 switches. And I would have one switch for this arrow, another switch for this arrow, another switch for this arrow, and the last switch for this arrow. And then I can control the monkey, can jump up and down, in, out, move all around. So that's what's cool with PBS Kids apps. Then I look at, can I use an app with a cell phone? So this is Go Talk Now app, and I really like the Go Talk Now app. So I just program these 4 messages. I've also used this for a student who's working at Home Depot and just program 4 common phrases. So this was for this student to be able to call his mom that needed a ride home. So we programmed these 4 messages. So he hits the first one that says, "Hey Siri," and then the iPhone wakes up.
Sorry, I'm having trouble with the connection.
Uh-oh, my iPad is now starting to talk to me. And then you say, "Call mom," and then you say, "Can you pick me up?" And then Siri will say, you know, or you could say, "Send a text message to mom. What do you want to say?" Anyways, you can program all these within Siri, and it will do, it communicates with your cell phone just fine. All right, what do you do if a needed feature is missing? You're like, oh, I really like this app if it only would do this or that. And so that's when I look at it saying, gee, what could I do? You know, maybe there's certain parts, certain features of the app that would be really good, and maybe I don't need all those other features. Could I add a control enhancer? What about accessories? And accessories could be a certain type of a mount thing. It could be, you know, using the switch controls with the iPad. But I want to call your attention down here, IFTTT. What that means is you can do cool things with the iPad using if this, then that. If this, then that. So what you do is you can get 2 apps working together. Sometimes people were using it for, if I get an email that has the name Quiet on it from the Quiet listserv, because I was getting tons of emails, if that happens, I want all of those emails going into a folder automatically. So you can set that up. Another thing is geofencing, and geofencing is using the GPS system built into your iPad or your iPhones. So you know how an app will say, do you want to access locations, or this app wants to access locations. Give me permission to access locations. That is really cool. Because what that means is you can set this up that says, when I come home at night, I want my lights to turn on. So it looks at, hey, you're home, you live at 24 Meadow Road, hey, cool. So we're going to make sure that the lights, as soon as the iPad or the iPhone comes within like a block of your house, the lights will turn on. In a school environment, looking at outside the building versus inside the building, setting things up with geofencing. that says, when I come inside the building, remind me to put my hat and jacket into my cubby, or something like that. So this whole thing about using different locations. Or you would have it set at, when I get home, I want you to remind me that I have to do my history assignment. So behind the scenes, it looks at, hey, you just got home. I'm going to send you a reminder to tell you you better work on your history assignment. All right, Quick Voice Pro. So here is big target areas. I'm looking for apps that have great big buttons. So if somebody has motor planning and difficulty in hitting a target area on the iPad, I want a feature where I've got big target areas to hit. And here's Quick Voice Pro and FaceTime. So Quick Voice Pro has a big target area for recording your voice and for sending it via email. FaceTime has a big target area for answering an incoming call, and it's got a green button. So green means go. So you can see it and you can hit it and then you answer the call. Or I could also use custom gestures with switches to answer the FaceTime call. All right, auditory and vibration. Look at this. I'm using the word mapping versus matching. And what I mean by mapping is I want to map different auditory sounds. I also want to map different vibration patterns. And the way I do auditory mapping is, let's say I can't pick up that iPad. I can't swipe and put my password in. I want to use my iPad to remind me, but the iPad's too difficult to interact with. So I'm going to pick different music to go on different times of the day. And so I'm going to have jazz music play for maybe about 10 seconds at 2 p.m. And I use that to remind myself at 2 p.m. to drink some water. And then I have another one with different music and different sounds that go off at around 6 p.m. And I want it to remind me to go home because I lose all track of time. So that's what I mean by auditory mapping. I pick out different music, different sounds throughout the day to remind me. And the iPad wakes up all by itself and it starts playing that music. And it takes a little bit for my head to recognize, hey, there's some music playing. Oh, why won't it stop? Oh, I know. I'm supposed to do a certain task. So, and then same thing with vibration mapping. Vibration mapping is something that you do on your cell phone under sounds and haptics. You can create a vibration pattern for a different reminder. So that's what I do. And this app here is called Alarms. And the reason I like it is there's less distraction here. It's pretty intuitive when you click on it and you're looking at how you want to program that. What I'm noticing right here is John from Maine. He says Seeing AI is very accurate with signs and papers. The object recognition is still in beta, but it's getting better. Face recognition, which is also beta, is pretty amazing and is improved if you have the person's picture on your device. Hey, that's pretty cool. All right, I'm going to go to the next one. And apps for finding apps. So on your iPad, you can download various apps for finding apps. So I'm going to type up in pink here, because I don't have the list, but there's one that's called Autism app, and that one is apps for finding apps. So you see where it's pink? You can write that down. Another one is VIA, which is an app for finding apps for blind and low vision. There's Moms with Apps. There is Apps Gone Free. There is, let's see, App Friday. I think that's with Moms with Apps, I think. And Apple has some apps, too, for helping you to select productivity apps. But in the chat box, if anybody has any other apps for finding apps that they want to list, because we can record all of these different tips that people put. Oh, good, Diane Thornton's typing something. Oh, apps for kids, great. John from Maine, he's got some. A list of apps as AT is on the main site website. Fabulous. Great, thanks, John. So there's websites. I'm going to show you a few websites for finding apps. I'm going to talk about Pinterest for finding apps. There's Wiki and blogs. There's OT with Apps blog. Twitter, if you're on somebody's Twitter thing, you can get, they'll give you different tips. The App Store itself. But Google is a go-to place. And the other thing is iTunes. I will always put like the name of an app plus iTunes. If I put iTunes always at the end, when I'm Googling, it'll take me right to that app right on iTunes. So that's been a nice little tip for finding apps, as long as I add the word iTunes after the word when I do a Google search. Oh, Common Sense Media. Yes, thanks, Diane. All right, so here's Mobile Nations. They have what they consider the best reminder apps and tasks apps for the iPhone. And while, yes, their recommendations are interesting, they are really catering to people in general in terms of productivity. Their website really is not looking at individuals who experience executive function impairments or mobility impairments, or it's just in general. But the problem is many of their apps that they recommend still far too many steps that you have to do. Here's OT with apps, and I met the OT that started this particular blog. And she has, this was from March 2017, and so she put her reminder, alarm, voice reminders, remind me apps. So I thought this is really kind of a cool website to go to. Jane Farrell. Jane Farrell is out of Australia, and what I love about her website is she's got switch apps, it has AAC apps, but look what she does. She gives you a lot of information in terms of what's the voice output and speech, pre-programmed pages, customization. She has her own little comments here. So I like looking at her work. It gives me a really good idea. And she spent some time looking at all the switch accessible apps. So she's got a great website. Feature matching matrices and worksheets. So I have my own worksheet, but I want you to look at a few of them that are out there. I was showing you like that mismatch analysis in the previous one, looking at the limitations and required abilities. We're conducting the cognitive demand. Can we bring up that other worksheet, Anna Marie? All right, this is the worksheet. All right, so I use this when I'm teaching my students about features and selecting of iPads. And so I give them an activity. I'm saying you're working with somebody with an executive function impairment, and they need to be reminded on Fridays to take the garbage out at 7 a.m. every Friday. So you're looking at an app that has reoccurring reminders because it's going to be every Friday. And then I have them go through all of these different activities. I'm going to come down to the next. Okay. So when they get to this cognitive demand, I want them to put the app down, and I want them to go ahead and program this recurring reminder about taking the garbage out at 7 a.m. Oh, here, I should have draw. Yeah, there we go. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. All right. And then I want them to describe what is the information processing. Do they have to read? Do they have to listen? Do they have to watch? Do they have to see? Then what is the inputting methods required to program that app for executive function, and then I want them to explore how they might adapt or modify the app. And you know, for executive function, the number one thing that the students have recommended is you could just easily use Siri that says, hey Siri, remind me every Friday to take the garbage out at 7 a.m. And so that's kind of cool.
Okay, I'll start reminding you about take the garbage out at 7 a.m.
So when I was saying it, my Siri on my iPhone just went off and said, okay, I'll remind you to take the garbage out at 7 a.m. Okay. Then I look at what are the cognitive demands associated with responding to the prompt. So now you've got it programmed, but when you respond to the prompt, do I have to read something? Could I have an auto voice that goes on that says, hey, Therese, take the garbage out? So you're looking at that, what the cognitive, do I see it? Do I hear it? There's some apps like Visual Scheduler that a video clip pops up and it starts playing and it shows you taking the garbage out. So that's what you want to know is what are all the steps that it takes to respond. Or maybe, like I was saying, the music goes off at 6 p.m. I know what that music is. Do I get up out of my chair and do I walk home? So how is it received? What is required for the person to interact with it? And again, how might you adapt the information to reduce the cognitive demands? So let's go back over to the PowerPoint, Anna Marie. Great. All right, so we're going to be looking at just features of a reminder app when we start to just analyze that. And you'll see features for communication apps, so we'll look at that. But these are some of the most common reminder apps, and many people like, oh, I don't have my green arrow anymore. There's my green arrow. There we go. They like this app. This app is free, and the features of this app, why do people like this particular app? So free is one feature. Second is that it has cloud syncing. So the entire family can benefit or use this particular app, this Wonderlist, and everybody can put the list on. You can put times on it. Many people like the AnyDo app. This is another very robust reminder type of app. It'll send you email messages to remind you. It taps into your contacts. Remember the Milk app? That's been around for a long time, and Things have been around. I found this app, there's a lot of people who like it. I found that it's too complex. There's too many steps with this. And same thing with Evernote. Evernote is a really nice, robust educational app, but it's not necessarily fully accessible for individuals who experience executive function impairments, attention deficit disorders. Robust, it interfaces with a lot of, I met the folks that with Evernote, you can do a ton of different things with it. So it's very, very robust. One of my favorites for ease of use is Alarmed. I love doing all the auditory mapping with this one, with the Alarmed app. And what I like about the Do app is it has these little light switches that you flick on for when is it due. And you can turn the light switch on and off. So things are due maybe on Tuesdays and Thursdays, so you flick that on, and then Tuesdays and Thursdays you get reminded. So that's another cool app. All right, geofencing. I never heard of it. I didn't know what geofencing was before. But geofencing taps into the GPS built into your iPad or your iPhone, and it sets reminders based upon locations. So I was like, wow, that is like really cool. And you don't have to go out and buy any apps. This is all built in to Apple's iOS 10 and iOS 11. So that is really cool. So you should tap into that, really learn those features that are built into your reminder app on your iPad or your iPhone. So you can also list sharing. family sharing accounts, you don't need Wunderlist anymore, because if you've got a family sharing account for your iPhone, then all you have to do is use the built-in feature on your iPhone. You don't need Wondershare anymore. Here's like alerts. This gives you, different ideas. This is from the sweetsetup.com. I thought they did a really nice overview of geofencing and the features with the GPS technology and reminders, and how the reminders will also interact with HomeKit and messaging. Pretty cool stuff here. I had no idea that reminders were so robust. So as we talked about, we said, multiple methods to do multiple input, multiple ways, reoccurring cloud-based syncing. That is really important, because if for some chance that your iPad dies, your phone dies, you can access all your reminders, everything that you've loaded on any website with the cloud-based syncing. We talked about geofencing and if this then that protocol, and of course most efficient and the automatic features. And then looking at apps that have least cognitive demands. So this is what I'm looking at when I'm analyzing features of apps for executive function. All right, so this is from Scope. It's like Australia, but here's what I like about this is an app feature map worksheet. So similar to some of the things I was looking at, you put the name of the app, you say, does it work on an Android or an iOS, an iPad, and then you go through this worksheet and you answer all these questions. So when I'm looking at like AAC devices, that's what this is really designed for, is to help you to analyze a particular AAC app. So you answer all these different questions, you find out if there's any support. And in terms of support, if you are concerned about any features or you don't know what you don't know, and you don't even know what questions to ask, in terms of tutorial, the first place I'm going to always go to is YouTube. If that app is worth its weight in gold, you better believe there's going to be YouTube clips that are going to take you step by step on how to effectively use that app. So that's the first place I go to get all my tutorials on how to use a particular app. So also we'll go voice output. Also, is it direct selection, indirect selection? This one was really cool. This is a Pinterest apps for vision impairments. And so on this Pinterest, they had, like iPad apps for kids with CVI, the best iPad apps for blind kids. So this is really a nice Pinterest for finding apps for vision impairments. This one is from teachingvisuallyimpaired.com, and I thought this was really cool because here they have the recommended note-taking apps, apps for accessing books, navigation and locating apps, braille apps, magnifier apps, vision skill apps, cause and effect apps, sound apps. Now here's the thing about when you get to one of these websites that have all of this, or even if you see it on Pinterest, the challenge is that there's new apps all the time. And so you want to look at what's the date that it was last updated. So you might find things when you start searching and it'll have like 2012. Well, we're in 2017. A lot has happened since 2012. So always look at the date on when it was last updated. And Boston Children's Hospital, they've done a fabulous job in looking at feature mapping for AAC. So you can go onto their website, but here's what they do, is you put the name of the app here, and then you can go across and check off. Does it have this feature, this feature, this feature? So when you're looking for apps very quickly that have voice recognition, you could look down this column. Or if you're looking for something that you can digitize a speech, you would look at which ones have digitized speech, and then you would select the app accordingly. So it's a little bit labor intensive doing that. I like to get our grad students to work on analyzing the communication apps according to this particular grid. So this one, it's easier to see rather than it being color-coded. But if you look up here, this is areas looking at output. This is looking at representation, customization, access, editing, price. So this is a really nice matrix to use when you're analyzing apps for communication. Then what I like about this is also from Children's Hospital, but it's looking at what are the physical demands. Do I have to touch something? Do I have to swipe? Do I have to drag? Do I have to have a refine point? But what it's not including is, hey, could I do custom gestures with a switch to make it accessible for somebody with motor planning challenges? And then, you know, based upon their analysis, they might select, they might circle one of these and say, okay, these are the apps that meet the particular features that we're looking for. And then they give that to the family so that they take home with them, and they might load these particular apps onto their iPad. So it's a nice little cheat sheet that you can quickly circle and check off and give to the person so that they know which apps to put on the device. And lastly, be careful. You know, when you see these things that say, oh, this app is really user-friendly, or it's easy to use, or it's robust, or it has multimodal inputs, output, or it's really flexible, you really, these alone don't tell you enough. What do they really mean by user-friendly or ease of use, and what does robust mean? But you're going to see these kind of words. People will say, I really like it because it's really easy to use, or it's robust. You're going to want to ask them more questions about what do they mean by that. All right, so it's 4:57, and let's see. Oh, Shelley put up edteacher.org apps. That's really cool. Oh, great, John, thanks for putting up the website for main site. Fabulous. Shelley, Understood Tech Finder, draws its app from Common Sense Media. All right. Oh, bridging apps. Yes, bridgingapps.org. Thanks, Deb. That is another real good one. Just checking to see if there's any last-minute questions or things people want to end. The hour went by really fast, and let's see, Anna Marie put up the Survey Monkey. So she says, please fill out the Survey Monkey. That CTD really wants to hear from you, so that's cool. Oh, and Anna Marie also put up the website that you can click on it in the chat box, so that's great. So we got 2 minutes left if anybody has any last-minute questions or things they want to post. Oh, thanks, John. He's going to add a link to this webinar right onto the website for Maine. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Deb. Oh, I know Bonnie Jensen Du Bois. Cool. Familiar names. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks, Michelle.
Dr. Therese Willkomm today. Dr. Willkomm has been working in the field for over 28 years. She's currently the director of the New Hampshire Statewide Assistive Technology Program with the Institute on Disability, and she is a clinical associate professor in the Department of Occupational Therapy. She's also the coordinator of the Graduate Certificate in Assistive Technology and the coordinator of the Disability Studies minor.